All right. What is up, folks? How are you doing? Thanks to everybody who's able to join us live. Always a pleasure to hang out with you. For those of you who are catching it on the replay, also very much appreciate your time checking out Office Hours today. My name is Kevin Winnery. I'm part of the Deno team working on developer relations, community, basically anything that needs working on as a scrappy unit as Deno is. But today I'm joined by a very special guest, Bartek from the CLI team. Bartek, how are you doing, sir?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm doing great and happy to join Office Hours once again.
All right.
It's been a while since I did this.
I know. We're glad we pulled you out of retirement to answer some questions here at Office Hours. So we have some folks kind of popping onto the live stream here. So we'll have, if you have not participated in Office Hours before, basically what we do is we answer questions live from the YouTube live chat. So if you have any questions for Bartek, for me, please feel free to pop them right in there and we'll answer them live to the best of our abilities. We also have an Office Hours thread going in Discord. So if you are watching the video already in Discord, you can also feel free to participate there. I also always post the Office Hours thread a few hours before we actually go live. So if you have any questions that you'd want to see addressed during Office Hours, you can just actually drop those in the Discord and we'll be able to answer those live during this time as well. So if you don't have a chance to do that, feel free to pop those in. But while we're kind of waiting for our first questions to roll in here, Bartek, what have you been up to lately? What's been your big project these days? I think we were talking a little bit about the struggles of trying to get HTTP2 working in like as a part of like the node compatibility layer for Deno.
Right, you're correct. So I'm struggling or working on the Node HTTP2 polyfill, as well as doing some ad hoc fixes to Node HTTP. But the Node HTTP will actually go another rewrite after I'm done with Node HTTP2. There's a lot of API surface to cover there, and these two modules are blockers right now for getting very popular packages working, like Google Cloud SDK or gRPC.js or Firebase. So there's a huge demand to get these packages working, and that's my focus since I'd say mid-July. Obviously, that's not the only thing I'm working on. There's like a list of 78 things that I'm working on at any given time, but these
Indeed.
two are
I've seen the list. It is an impressive and long list.
Well, it's probably too long. That said, these two modules are currently at the top of the list, so they are given the priority. But since we're releasing every month, I also have to tend to reviewing some of the PRs and actually doing other fixes. And sometimes, but very, very much sometimes, I enjoy to write a new feature here and there. Usually they're very small these days. Maybe we'll have some more exciting news in the coming weeks and months for you.
Oh, we will. We definitely will have some more exciting news, especially as we get a little closer to the 2.0 launch. But I do have a couple other like some general purpose technical questions that have come in that we'll get to. But the first live one we have comes from our friend Lionel Levon, which is, what's your favorite ice cream flavor, Bartek?
That's a tough one because I'm not really a sweet tooth, and I can't really remember last time I ate ice cream.
Well, that's a little bit sad that you can't remember the last time you've eaten an ice cream cone. I also am not the hugest like sweet tooth, but so I live in Minneapolis, or just outside Minneapolis in St. Paul, and in the St. Paul, which is the capital city of Minnesota, there's a shop called the Grand Ole Creamery, and like it's the place where you have to stop if you like ice cream. So like when the US presidents like come through Minnesota, like it's a place like they'll get like the ice cream photo op there. And for a good reason, it's definitely really good. And at this place, they have a flavor called Cookie Monster, which is a cookie dough and like chocolate chip vanilla sweet cream concoction, and they make all the ice cream themselves. Like in the shop, they make all the cones themselves in the shop, and it is fantastic. So something like cookie dough and Oreo based is usually like my jam.
Then just to answer the question, I'd say cookie dough, probably Ben & Jerry's cookie dough. That's probably the last one I had a very long time ago. So let's go with this one.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one to go with. Yeah, like I said, if you have questions from in the chat, definitely let us know. But I'll go with some that were logged a while ago. And one of those being, because Deno comes with like a built-in linter, like a built-in linter, built-in formatter. A lot of times you don't have to really mess with the rules that are in the linter, but it might actually be cool to show like, what are the situations in which you might want to deviate from some of the formatting and how you do that. So maybe as a quick warm up, maybe we could see how we do that, like how we'd actually configure the linter and or the formatter to follow different rules than it does today.
Sure, we can definitely do that. Maybe to start and answer why you want to do that, I'll start with formatter because it's a bit easier. Let's say you have an existing code base that maybe you've used Prettier to format it, or any other formatter for that sort. And well, if you want to change a formatter, that usually means you need to tweak the settings to keep the formatting the same as it was, or you need to reformat all of your code, and then you end up with a PR that is, several thousand lines of code changed, and all of them are just formatting tweaks. So not everyone is into that sort of things. Of course, there's some Git magic you can do to actually exclude particular commit or PR from showing up in history. Nonetheless, that's the case in most situations. So the obvious answer here is that you might want to tweak the formatting because you have an existing code base that you just want to switch formatters from, for example, switching from Prettier to Deno FMT. There's a very good chance that your formatting will just get a lot faster. Deno FMT is backed by a library called dprint. Dprint was written by our own David Sherrod, and it's supposed to work like Prettier in most situations, but since it's written in native code, it usually provides a huge speed up compared to Prettier. So how you would do that? Let me try to share my screen. And,
yeah, let's do it.
Let's see if we can actually figure this out. So I want to share my entire screen, and we'll start with my terminal here. And excuse me for just a second, I need to increase the brightness of my display because it's quite sunny today. All right, so let's start with an empty project. I'm gonna do Deno init, FMT, and lint, and initialize the new project for me. So let's switch to that, and let's open it in VS Code. And I will increase the font size for this. This workspace appears to be Deno workspace. Sure thing, I do want to enable Deno here. Okay, so we got a couple files here. This is the default project generated by Deno init, so there's nothing special about this. How would you go about configuring formatter in Deno? Well, you can do this in two ways. If you're a terminal person like I am, you might want to format from your terminal by typing Deno FMT, and sure enough, Deno FMT just formatted our VS Code settings. And you can tweak the settings here from the terminal. If you type Deno FMT help, you will get a list of options you can configure using CLI flags. So let's see what we have here. Use tabs for folks who prefer tabs over spaces. Line width, our default line width is 80 columns. That's because some folks are like really heavy on using Vim and other editors that also wrap at 80 columns. Plus, a lot of us now these days have very wide screens, so you can actually fit like 3, 4, or even 5 and 8 columns, depending on how wide is your screen. And 80 columns make it also very easy to read the code on GitHub, for example, or other web-based tools. So, for example, let's try to do the tabs here. So I'm just gonna do use tabs equals true, and Deno reformatted all of my code. And now, as you can see, we only have tab characters. So if I go between these two places, instead of having 2 spaces, we have a single tab character. So that's one option of configuring Deno FNT. Another one is to just go into your Deno JSON file and go into the FNT settings. And I'm gonna do, sorry, one second. I'm gonna switch off Copilot here. So it doesn't clash with the suggestion provided by the Deno LSP. So let's see, in here it should be use tabs, and this time we'll do false. And if I type Deno FNT again, everything is reformatted again, and now we have spaces instead of tabs. And similarly, we could maybe do, let's see, semicolons. It seems a lot of folks don't like semicolons. I highly suggest to actually use them because they're free foot guns in JavaScript that actually without the semicolon will give you something you don't expect. And I will leave these free foot guns for you to actually discover yourself. You can find a lot of info on the internet. And once you read about these free foot guns, you're probably gonna be, yeah, I'm gonna keep with semicolons. Okay, so semicolons false. Actually, maybe I will open a terminal right here, so I don't have to switch windows. Right, so Deno FNT again, and everything got reformatted again. And now if we go, no semicolons. So that's how you configure your Deno format tool. Regarding linter, it's pretty much the same. You can either use the CLI flag. So if we type Deno lint -- help, we'll get some information here. And there's a lot less configuration possible for the linter. However, there are still some things you can configure. So first of all, you can type Deno lint -- rules to see what rules are available to you. Most of them are enabled by default. They are part of the so-called recommended set. And they pretty much mirror the recommended set from ESLint. So they help you catch common problems or quirks with code. Sometimes they might be a bit obnoxious, but the idea behind them is just to ensure your code is of high quality and there are no surprises. Sure, if I, for example, do function foo and then put nothing in here, I'm pretty sure I don't have, linter enabled in my VS Code at the moment. So let me fix that. And I think I have. Yeah, there was a squiggly line. Sorry, I thought I'm on very old extension because I haven't updated in a while. So if I hover over a squiggly line, we get the lint rule that says you cannot have unused envors, unused variables. And sure enough, we just added this foo function, but we have never used it. So while you're writing, this might be a little bit like painful because I know what I'm doing. I just started this function and I'm going to use it in a second. But if you have a 1,000-line file or even 100, 200, sometimes it's easy to miss that you just left something there that is no longer used. So your code has just rotted, right? Or got rotten. So Deno lint will point out these common problems. Sometimes you just forget to remove something, or we got a require lint rule right here. So if you do async function bar and then you just do some synchronous stuff here, hello world, Deno lint will once again point to you that in this case, well, first of all, this function is unused, but more important, you created an async function, but you never did anything asynchronous. That is, you never used await keyword here. If we, let's silence the two problems about unused variables and just leave the fact that we don't have await expression. But now if we do await new promise, and let's do resolve set timeout resolve 1000, now linter is happy. Yes, you created an async function and you actually have some asynchronous stuff going on. But you can do something like this, return new promise, and once again, Deno lint will point out, hey, this function doesn't need to be asynchronous. You don't use await keywords. And for folks who might be missing some context here, it's not like async functions are completely free. Like in this case, we created our own promise that resolves after some timeout. So this is pretty much the delay helper that you can pull from Deno std. But because we're directly returning a promise and then we're using an async function, pretty much there's like another micro task being added here. If you remove this async keyword, you just lower the amount of micro tasks by 1. Might not be much, but again, if you have a huge code base, these can add up, and then you start profiling your code, and then you look into the V8 profile, or maybe you use some more advanced tools like Samply, where you actually see everything going on in your process, and then you will see that resolving microtasks by V8 suddenly takes like 20% of the whole runtime of your program. So once again, sometimes these rules might feel a little obnoxious to you, but they have good intent. They steer you towards better code, faster code, trying to catch common problems. And once again, these rules are based on the recommended set from ESLint. So huge kudos to folks that created and maintain ESLint. And yeah. That's pretty much it. About configuration, because I started talking about this but didn't say anything really.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So, like, I know a lot of folks sometimes like to tweak their like linter settings. Like, are there any settings that you use beyond the recommended set that you either recommend or always turn off because you find them annoying?
There's one setting that I like to use, and we use it internally when working on Deno code base, and this is I don't remember. Let's see if I can actually find it in the terminal. I'm gonna grab and look for to do rules, maybe all rules. Oh, there's no such flag. Okay, I'm just gonna be lazy and I'm gonna click on one of these and open a browser. And I'm gonna hide this one. So show all rules, and there's a rule that's called ban untagged to do. So, sometimes when you're working on a code, you just don't finish it outright and you leave a to do. And in Deno, we decided that it's not that you just leave to do and that's it. You actually either have to put a handle of the person who leaves to do or the person who should address the to do, or you at least need to add like an issue number or PR number. So there is actually some reference what's going on. And similarly, I believe if you don't put anything after the to do directive or comment, linter will also refuse to pass the check on the file. And this is, again, just to ensure that this is not forgotten forever. There's some context on who you might message to figure out what is a to do here if the comment is not great. So that's one rule that I actually like. And similarly, this one is actually in the recommended set. So sometimes you just need to silence some of the lint rules because of some reason, but you cannot just do this ad hoc. you want to silence a specific rule. For example, if we go back to our code here and we actually do async function. So if I look at problems, Deno is again complaining that we have an async function, but we didn't use await. Maybe I do actually want it to be an async function because it's part of a class. We have class called foo that extends bar, and class bar actually has an async function called bar, right? So when you extend a class, you actually need to keep the same signature. So in this case, we're complaining that bar has no await expression, but we're kind of forced to use the same signature. So you might want to silence the linter here. So you type Deno lint ignore, and ta-da! On one hand, this will not complain about the missing await, but this will complain that, hey, you cannot just wholesale disable linter. You need to specify what you want to silence specifically. So if I pass require await here, now it's not complaining anymore. And this is complaining because of, yes, not the same property. So let's say this is promise unknown. Sure, I guess that could work. Okay, let's do void. Maybe this will be better. Anyway, similarly, if you actually used an await keyword here, so this is no longer true that there is a lint violation in this line. So linter will again complain that, hey, you ignored require await rule, but it's not violated here. This directive makes no sense here. Are you sure it should be here? So this is just to prevent code rot as your code evolves. And again, sometimes these rules might feel obnoxious, and you can just wholesale disable linter on a specific file if you're hacking away. But if you have a code base that you intend to maintain for months, years preferably, these are actually useful. So yeah, hopefully this answers the question. And just to quickly finish, yes, you can configure linter right here. You can say which files you don't want to be linted. So we can actually say main test should not be linted. And yeah, the lint errors from main test are gone. And you can also use something called tags. This is pretty much enabling a known set of rules. So recommended is enabled by default. So you might write recommended. Sorry, I can't spell today. But this has no effect because this is enabled by default. But last month, we shipped a rule set for Fresh, dedicated for writing projects with Fresh that helps catch common problems or errors. So you might just want to add, sorry, Fresh here. Yeah, I can't type today. Again, like if you're working on Fresh, this will be added for you automatically to ensure your code is of high quality. But yeah, you might want to enable or disable some of these rule sets yourself. There's not many of these rule sets, but yeah, the functionality is there. And if someone feels like contributing more rules to Deno lint, we always very much welcome contributions and yeah, highly appreciate them.
Yeah,
do you wanted to know something more about linter? Because I've been blabbering for 20 minutes.
No,
now.
that's that is indeed what I think was intended by the question. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. One area like I am going to poke at a little bit, because I bet everybody who's used Deno with VS Code before saw one of the other like little squigglies that you had in the editor, which was the missing or uncached HTTP import for, like, say, like you have the HTTP import for like the standard library, and in VS Code it complains that it's not cached yet.
Sure. So
yeah, I'd love to hear you talk
screen.
a little bit about like why that is, what's happening there.
Okay. I'm sharing my screen again. I assume this is the one you're talking about.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah. So We released a new version of Deno 2 hours ago or 3 hours ago. So I upgraded before the stream started. I initialized a new project, and with every release of Deno, a new release of Deno STD comes out. And when I use Deno init to create a fresh project, it used the latest version of STD to match the latest version of Deno binary itself. And so it happens I have not downloaded this dependency yet. I think if I just change it to a version prior, so 197, okay, I don't have this one cached either. Probably I don't have a lot of them cached either. So the extension says that it's uncached, or this URL just hasn't been visited. So like it cannot provide a lot of IntelliSense. If we hover over assert equals, it just says import. But like assert equals is an actual function. It has some types that it expects. It has some type that it returns. But right now, Deno is not able to figure this out because you haven't downloaded this. So we can do it ourselves. I can probably right click on it and click refactor. No, I need to press command.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to
if you hover it.
Okay, yeah,
exactly.
And there's a quick fix provided. So if I click quick fix, it suggests to just cache this dependency. So I click this. The warning goes away. Now, if I hover over assert equals, ta-da, we got the JS doc, we got the typings, everything. So this is a common problem for folks that's like, this is painful. I have to click cache or run this code myself first time to actually be downloaded. And yes, we hear you. We are aware of this. If I remember correctly, one of our contributors actually either started a PR, or the PR has already been merged but maybe not released. That will take care of this automatically. So you'll be working with VS Code Deno. You type a new import. So let's say I do maybe, let's see, testing BDDTS. It will again complain that this is not cached. Once that new version of extension is released, it will actually try to automatically cache these files as you import them. So you won't have to do these commands to do a quick fix or run the code first time yourself to actually acquire these new dependencies. So the experience will get a lot smoother and better.
So like kind of behind the scenes what's happening is because like when Deno tries to evaluate this code, if it hasn't yet had to download and cache these dependencies, it will do so for the first time when it attempts to run the file, right? So that's kind of how this is working behind the scenes.
Yeah, but like when we first created our language server and integration with editor, we went the conservative way. So like you might have misspelled the URL. So instead of throwing errors at you, we just decided, okay, this needs to be handled by user manually. Let's gather some feedback from folks. Let's see what they think about this. And obviously, you folks are overwhelmingly like, this is painful. I don't want to cache this manually. Please fix this. So yeah, there's some work going on that will make this automatic for you. You can track VS Code Deno repository. There's like a master issue about Q3 roadmap that I can link right here. And one of these issues is the one that will actually automatically cache the dependencies for you.
Awesome. Here, grab that URL quick. Actually, maybe drop that in the chat, like in the comments. Like you can probably do that from this UI.
I'm gonna paste it for you and let you take care of that.
Okay, sweet. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Cool. Well, then maybe I'll pop in another question that was asked asynchronously, which is, what's kind of the state of hosting options for Deno outside of Deno deploy? Like where are we seeing, what are like the most popular hosting options that we're seeing pop up that aren't, using the hosted service from Deno? What are most folks doing in production these days?
That's a very good question, but I'm not a very good person to answer this because, well, I can only say that you're not constrained to using Deno deploy. You can deploy your Deno app to any VPS, that is virtual private server, any bare metal server, essentially anything that allows you to run a binary file. So Deno also runs on Lambda, AWS Lambda, and probably Azure Functions. So what is the most popular deployment platform? I guess depends on your use case, because if you have a very long running service, maybe you have an HTTP server, you probably don't want to deploy it to Lambda, right? Because Lambdas are triggered by external events, and having an HTTP server that does whatever it wants to do, proxy to another server, this is not a good fit for Lambda. So you probably deploy this to maybe Fly.io, or maybe DigitalOcean, or Hetzner, or whatever else you prefer. So this vastly or greatly depends on your actual use case. Of course, if you know you need a Lambda because there's an external event that will trigger this specific function, you can deploy Deno to Lambda.
Yeah, you definitely can. And actually, like there's a few community maintained sort of preset templates for running Deno on Lambda. One of them, I think, maintained by Brian LaRue from the Begin team. So so there's a couple you can choose from that kind of work out of the box if Lambda specifically is something that you're looking for. But it's also notable, like there might be situations in which you would want to, like, even if you like and want to use Deno deploy, where you might want to host Deno separately, because there are some subtle differences between the Deno runtime that works in deploy on the edge, and also like in the CLI that you would run like in a VPS, or a Docker container or whatever. So if you actually need like if you absolutely have a hard requirement on NPM modules, say, because like NPM modules don't work on deploy today. We are actively working on it. Not even that far away, actually. I think before too long it'll land. But like if you have that requirement today, this second, you have the option of like hosting the runtime yourself, like in a different server environment, and those things will work just fine.
And obviously, I forgot to mention probably one of the most popular deployment methods these days is that if you're deploying a Docker container, any service that allows you to deploy a Docker container will obviously work with Deno. Yeah. Heroku or Fly.io or Render or anything else that is able to handle Docker containers, you can use it to host your Deno applications. And obviously, if you're maybe in an enterprise setting, or you're writing an internal service for your company, talk to your local sysadmin or DevOps, and they will tell you how you can deploy it. Probably using Docker, but maybe they will just allow you to run pure Deno binary on one of their machines. Again, it greatly depends on your use case.
Yep, for sure. But like similar to any other like server side runtime, like one configuration I saw from a customer the other day, like they just have like a Nginx that reverse proxies to like a Deno process that's running on, in their container. So,
and that's a fantastic option. Nginx will take care of load balancing and splitting the and routing to a proper process that is not overloaded. In essence, if you've ever deployed a Node.js app or a Python app or a Ruby app or Laravel app, this is the same deal. The only difference is that you need this one single binary, Deno binary, to start your process, and obviously your source code and dependencies. So that's pretty much it. It's just how easy it is to deploy Deno in this situation.
Yep, right on. All right, so we have another one, and I don't know, this is less of a Bartek question. This would have been like a good Arnaud question for last time around, unfortunately. But in terms of like being able to set environment variables through deploy CTL, I'll say from my viewpoint, I haven't seen like a sort of underway issue for that. That being said, I don't imagine it would be like complete rocket science. So like if you haven't added this feedback yet, like within the Deno deploy dashboard, there's like a button that you can click to send feedback. It sends you out to a GitHub repository where you can create an issue for deploy feedback. And we go through those every single week. Actually, there's literally a standing meeting on Friday where we kind of go through all the feedback that's come in for deploy. And that's a great place to kind of make your desires known and kind of help us prioritize those things.
Yeah, definitely no or use okay questions, but I'm sure this is definitely possible. It's a matter of how in demand this feature is, and I'm sure power users would love to be able to not leave their terminal and just do everything using deploy CTL.
Yeah, that is true. I will say for my part, I do enjoy deploy CTL. It kind of it reminds me of the good old days of like kind of Heroku before things went off the rails a little bit with that service. But anyway, cool. Other questions? I'm just kind of looking at chat and then also at my list of historical questions that have come in as well. And yeah, so one of the so not seeing any from the live chat right now. One of the historical questions that's come in is like, what are kind of you mentioned like foot guns for the for semicolons. What are some of the common like problems that you see pop up in the ways that people are using Deno today? Like, what are some common bugs, some common gotchas that you've seen like pop up in the Discord or from customers? That maybe are recurring that we could educate folks about.
Right. One thing that comes to my mind that was recently fixed or at least improved is that TypeScript has these / directives like references, no default lib or lib or whatever. I'm sorry if I'm a bit ignorant here, but like TypeScript is just huge and I don't know all the details by heart. But in some situations, in one of your dependencies configured these references, you suddenly might have started getting a diagnostic or an error that the Deno global object is not defined. And this was purely a configuration problem. I know it's been fixed or at least greatly improved that in such situation, if you actually hover over this diagnostic, it will suggest you that you're probably missing this directive because one of your dependencies reconfigured it. Put this at the top of your main file and you should be good to go. So that's one of the problems that was quite prominent, at least in recent months. As for other food guns, that's a tricky question. I'm just going through so many issues every week that it's really hard for me to.
It's hard to analyze the. Yeah, it's definitely a broad one. There, actually, like one of the ones that it sort of reminds me of it from this sort of historical list of questions is within Visual Studio. So like when you're initializing a workspace for Visual Studio Code, it asks you if you want to enable linting and like unstable APIs. But sometimes like you don't enable unstable APIs. You try to use like Deno KV, say, and it's not available. And you go into your settings and you change it to true, but like sometimes VS Code like doesn't like sort of acknowledge that you've done that. Is there a way to kind of like boot VS Code in the butt and like have it sort of reevaluate those settings for you?
Yeah, certainly. So let's try to do just that. This is my settings for VS Code. So I just have Deno enabled and linting enabled, but no unstable APIs. So if I try to do const db equals await Deno openkv, we have no suggestion here, and it's gonna complain that property openkv does not exist on type of Deno. Did you mean open? Or there's now a suggestion that Deno openkv is an unstable API. I believe this is a recent improvement as well. So it suggests to run with the unstable flag, or you can change the lib compiler option to include unstable. Yeah, it says Deno unstable. So let's try to do that. If I go to settings and I do Deno unstable and switch it to true, and I save, Did I screw something up here? Probably I did. Let me just remove this configuration so we're not playing with several things at once that might conflict with one another. It now works. I believe this is, again, one of these little paper cuts that is little but is very deep, so it's very painful. That was recently fixed. Thank you, David. David put a lot of effort in recent weeks to actually handle things like that. So if you change your settings, it should now automatically refresh. That said, sometimes something goes horribly wrong. Maybe a scenario we haven't yet considered. You can always force Deno to actually restart everything. Tear down all the diagnostics, tear down everything you have in memory, and load this whole project again. So you can do that via the command palette. I'm on Mac, so this is Command-Shift-P in VS Code. And you can either do reload window, which reloads the whole VS Code window, or again, if I do Command-Shift-P and I do Deno, we got restart language server, which will essentially kill the language server that is running underneath, that is spawned by the VS Code Deno extension, and it will restart, essentially loading all the configuration you have in the workspace from scratch, generating all the diagnostics from scratch, and usually any of these two options will refresh the whole state of your project if something goes horribly wrong. We're trying to address these problems one by one, and we are aware of how painful they are and how they make your developer experience worse. So we're trying to put a lot of effort into it. That said, there's still a long list of things that we need to fix. So if something is expected to work, you're 100% sure that this should work, and somehow it's not, try to kick the language server in the butt, and it should straighten itself out. So either restore language server or just reload the VS Code window. Obviously, this is not great, and again, we're working on this. We're trying to fix all these problems. Give us some more time here.
For sure, and definitely, the Deno VS Code plugin is open source on GitHub as well. An issue on that repository would be the appropriate place to give some feedback for the VS Code experience specifically. But that is exactly the hack that I was hoping you would demonstrate, because reloading the window is usually the nuke it from Orbit just to be sure option that I employ, like if I'm experiencing some weirdness with the VS Code plugin. So another question that just came in on the Discord is to maybe comment on a proposal that here, I'll Slack it to you, Bartek, so you can take a look at the specific issue that that I was looking at. But basically the idea is, a concept of being able to spawn a Deno process with maybe a different set of permissions, like a different set of sandboxed permissions. And here, I'll actually, let me share this in the,
sure,
in the chat as well with everybody else, so they kind of know what we're looking at. But the idea again is, is this a proposal that we've thought about? Like, what would be involved here? Is this something that would be tricky or something we'd consider doing?
I would need to dive deeper into this proposal, but from a very brief look, let me actually just once again share my screen. Oh, we already did that.
Yeah, I'll
so
pop it
we're
up
looking.
for us, yeah.
So proposes a function that would allow to spawn a sandbox Deno subprocess. This function would not require the allow run function. I guess it's meant to be a flag. The first pass of this proposal would only allow for Deno run to be spawned to keep things simple. This later on can be expanded to allow spawning various other subcommands. I'm not sure. Is the idea here that the permissions you can pass cannot exceed the current set of permissions? Can be escalated beyond what the parent process has access to? I see. I have no idea. To be honest, I'm not sure if I saw this issue in the past. Maybe I did, but I don't have a strong opinion on it right now. Seems useful, but that might be quite tricky to figure out, or maybe not. Well, if you really need this, upvote the issue and keep bugging us about this. We might as well consider it.
Though, like, if one were sort of hard pressed to try to create, like, it wouldn't be spawning a process in the same way, but you could certainly like spawn a Deno process with a different set of flags that would have like a different entry point, like today with the APIs that exist. I mean, it wouldn't function exactly the same way as sort of.
Yeah. I guess the clue here is that the permissions you'd grant to the spawn sub process wouldn't be couldn't be escalated. So if the process you're running in has only allow read and maybe allow write permissions, the spawn sub process couldn't have any other permissions. And currently, when you spawn a sub process, you'd be able to pass any flags you wanted. So sure, I can see some value in this proposal. So yeah, please comment on the issue if you find this API useful and would actually want to see it in Deno.
Yep, for sure. That's another important thing to keep in mind. Like I mean, the GitHub issues are how like the team operates on the repo. So like commenting on issues and like making your voice heard there is the best way to let us know that it's something that's important to you. Question coming in about, I actually just got back from Seattle yesterday. I was at Seattle JS Conf. It was a great conference. Actually, maybe my second one, like post-pandemic. I have not been to very many live events since the pandemic. So apologies if I was a little rusty for anybody who was watching it, and for anybody who will watch it. The question is whether or not the talk is going to be available on YouTube, and I believe they are going to kind of cut it up and make it available on the Seattle JS on YouTube. I think Seattle JS itself has a YouTube channel, and in it, I just talk a little bit about what Deno is, what makes it different. I also talk a little bit about Deno 2.0. So there is a fairly exciting a thing that we haven't talked a lot about publicly yet, which is we're actually planning to create in Deno 2.0 like a Deno specific registry that will actually work sort of similarly to like an NPM or any like Ruby gems or Packagist or any kind of centralized package management tool you might have used in the past to help kind of address some of the issues, some shortcomings that we've seen like with HTTPS imports as sort of like a primary dependency management mechanism. And actually, Bartek, I'd love to hear kind of your take on like what are some of the challenges that you see with like HTTPS imports? Like what are some of the things as a practical matter that maybe you've experienced yourself?
Right. By far, the biggest problem appears to be dependency deduplication. So each URL is pretty much unique. Deno doesn't treat URLs in any special way. That is, if your URL says Deno land/std at 0.190.0 and another one uses 0.102.0, these are two different URLs, and Deno has no idea that these URLs might point to the exact same API, and you will essentially end up with two different versions of the same library, which in other programming environments is usually handled by a package manager, where you most likely use the Semver resolution. So there's this complex algorithm that collects all your dependencies and tries to deduplicate them. So figures out the Semver constraints, and if it's able to, it will select the version that will be used by all the dependencies. So we don't have two different versions of the same library included. Sometimes it's not possible because your dependencies might actually depend. One of them might depend on version 1.5 and the other one on version 2.2. These are two different major versions. So even if you're resolving Semver, you will end up with two copies of the library at different versions. And in Deno, this becomes more and more obvious, and a lot of folks are hitting this problem where they're using Preact or maybe some other library that introduces a new either a new feature or is expected to have only a single instance running. So yeah, I believe this is a problem with Preact, where if you have two different versions of Preact, it will create two different instances, and suddenly stuff doesn't work as you expect, because some of the components are handled by one of instance of Preact, some are handled by the other. And the idea here is that with changes that will be introduced in Deno 2, we'll actually have a mechanism for using dependencies with Semver. So this problem of duplicate dependencies is only if you use HTTP or HTTPS imports. When we added npm specifier support, we added it in the way that works in Node.js, so they are actually Semver deduplicated. And now we're working on a solution for Deno first dependencies that would essentially work in very similar manner, that you'd be able to specify a Semver constraint, and Deno will take care of resolving these ranges to actually try and deduplicate as many dependencies as possible. Another problem with HTTP and HTTPS imports, and I believe this is just a natural result of having decentralized system, is that if you rely on authority that is not very reliable, and you don't cache your dependencies, you download them on every CI run, you might just hit the problems that the server is not available. So on one hand, this is a very powerful mechanism, powerful and simple, because you just use a URL to access any file on the internet. So you can hit up your GitHub repo directly, or you can just point Deno to your own server. But beware that, well, networking is like, it has fault built into it. Like these are electrical and optical signals. Sometimes cables get cut. Sometimes you just cannot reach the server because it goes down. Deno retries on failed downloads, but the truth is it sometimes just happens. And if the authority, the server you're trying to hit, is not very reliable, you might find yourself in a situation when you just cannot reach your dependency. Though the same is pretty much true with every single dependency system in any language. Like if you use Rust, crates.io is very reliable, but sometimes it happens that it will return 502 error and you won't be able to get your dependencies. You might retry after a second and it will work, but sometimes it just happens. So this is like a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's very powerful and yet simple. It works just like in browsers. But if you're not careful enough, you can just shoot yourself in the foot by using not reliable servers, or if you serve files from your own server and don't consider that these sources you're serving should be immutable, and you just start changing them, you might get inconsistent results on different machines, because you download your source on your personal laptop and you use version created 2 months ago, but then you change this dependency on your server without changing URL or adding proper headers, and you download it on your colleague's laptop and you get completely different results. So like, you should consider that the sources at a URL should be immutable. So if you want to change it, bump its version and change the URL, include this version in your URL.
Yeah, for sure. The other one that like has gotten me personally a couple times is like, sometimes if you're using a service like an esm.sh, say, that does some amount of processing on the dependencies also. Like sometimes the contents will change, like of a single URL will change in a very subtle way, such that it actually behaves a little differently, or like maybe in this case, like a compilation process or a transform process fails, like while it was trying to update, or like as a part of some other background task. So there ends up being like a few kind of gnarly, rakes that you can step on with HTTP imports. But like I think we'll actually be working on some longer form technical content on 2.0 and the registry and all of those types of things. So we'll have lots more to share in the future as that starts to bake a little more and we feel a little better about some of the technical details to the point where we can share beyond the high level stuff. But yeah, you can expect to see like a Deno specifier that will work in a kind of a very similar way to the NPM specifiers that you use today if you use NPM dependencies. All right, so seeing none in the in the chat, there's definitely historical ones we can get to next time, but at about 4 minutes left here. So Bartek, like what's like your white whale? Like what's the thing that you want to work on in the CLI that like maybe you don't have time for, or it seems like it always like kind of you can't prioritize it? Do you have something like that that's been like just a bee in your bonnet that you've wanted to fix or build for a long time?
There's a lot of things like that. I really enjoy working on the tooling we have in Deno. So like if you have Deno test or Deno length, I very much like working on tools like this, making them easier to use, more reliable, more powerful. So yeah, there's a list of 10 things I would love to add to Deno test that would make them more flexible and work better in a lot of situations. So like automatic retries. So you can specify that this test can be retried up to 3 times. If you're writing end-to-end testing, for example, using Puppeteer, again, this is not 100% reliable. You're loading something into a browser, you're trying to click on something. Sometimes there might be a latency problem and you hit a timeout, and these tests are just flaky in nature. So it would be great to just have a way to tell Deno, hey, you can retry this test up to 3 times. If it fails 3 times, then it's really failing and it's really broken. And you can do it yourself already, but obviously it would be very nice if this worked out of the box in Deno. Similarly with Deno coverage or Deno length, I would love to finally provide maybe a plugin system so folks can either write their own plugins or even better, provide a compatibility layer with existing ESLint plugins. So people could just use their existing ESLint rule sets and be able to use them in Deno. So yeah, tooling is one of the things I very much enjoy working on. Another one is performance. It's always nice to, well, it's not so nice to find that something is slow, but it's super exciting and interesting to try and figure out why is it slow and then make it not slow and preferably very fast. So we also did a lot of work like this this year, and we have a dedicated team at the company that is focusing on performance. And while you might not see these performance improvements every single month, I can assure you that we are working hard and doing a lot of grunt work, both grunt and groundwork for upcoming performance improvements. Deno is quite a big system at this point, and we have a lot of users using Deno every single month or even week and every day. So rolling out some of the performance improvements is not as easy as one might think. We just need to ensure that these performance improvements don't regress like it happened a few months ago with the WebSocket API, where we found some performance improvements and we actually thought that now the API is going to be more stable because we added Autobahn test suite, which got us a lot more coverage. Turns out that Autobahn Test Suite is not testing everything, and there are some real-world scenarios people were running into, like they were running a WebSocket server and suddenly a connection started hanging up after 2 days of being online. Like, we didn't consider and test that you might have a WebSocket connection that is constantly connected for over 2 days. And there's a long tail of things like this we need to consider when improving performance. I can only say that there's some exciting work where we are essentially replacing our engine while we're still flying. And this is actually a second or third situations like that in the past year, where we're replacing an engine or one of the engines while we're in flight. So that's a very peculiar and interesting work to be working on.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like what I do think is cool is that there is sort of a dedicated set of folks that are always trying to think about like how we squeeze more water out of the rock in terms of performance improvements in Deno. So, all right. So I think that's actually a pretty good place to wrap us up. So, as always, like if you have questions we didn't get to today or you didn't get a chance to ask them during today's session, please feel free to drop them in the office hours thread in Discord. Like I said, before every office hours session, I usually start up a thread where like if you want to drop in your questions, you can feel free to do that. Or if I haven't started that thread yet and you'd just like to ask a question for one of these sessions, pop it in office hours and I'll kind of aggregate it and add it to sort of like the historical list document that I have going for these sessions. So definitely feel free to drop them there. We'll be back with office hours again in 2 weeks, actually. I believe our special guest for that is going to be, I think that is Arnaud next time around. If memory serves. So you'll be able to bug him about Deno deploy related stuff specifically. So it'll be really fun to have that conversation. Bartek, thank you so much for your time, sir. I know you're a very busy guy, so I appreciate you hanging out with us here this morning.
Thanks for having me. It was fun answering some of the questions.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Thanks to everybody who joined us live. Thanks to everybody watching on the replay, and we'll chat with you again real soon.